Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Radical Cup UK as they take to Brands Hatch for our second race of the day. They're working their way around now for their sort of warm-up lap, installation lap and formation lap, and they'll work their way onto the grid for the race start. And we'll run you through the grid as soon as we've got the graphic available, but really looking forward to the Radicals. They're some of my sort of favourite class of cars to watch. They sound fantastic, and they look fantastic, and they race fantastic. As well. This is round number 2 of what will be a 6-round plus sort of a world final championship, but in terms of sort of their UK/Zandvoort stint, it's going to be round 2. We've got a rolling start, so we'll run through the grid as they're behind the safety car. Pole position is going to go the way of Marcus Littlewood. Alongside him is going to be Shane Stoney, just a tenth and a half between the pair of them on the front row. Jack Yang from Hamish Forest for row 2. Rounding off the top 5 is going to be Andy Lowe with John McLeod alongside him for row number 3. Behind that, Alex Fisher and Rachel Robertson for row number 4, rounding off the top 8. You've got Fongini from Davis and Pinkerton, who's going to be starting from the pit lane in 11th place. So 10 cars taking to the grid and a rolling start as well. So managing the pace is going to be Marcus Littlewood on the right-hand side as well as they approach the first corner of Paddock Hill Bend. So a good initial bite is going to be vital if he wants to secure a good start towards Paddock Hill at turn number 1. But Shane Stoney, if he's able to get a good launch, maybe to look to go to the outside. We've got 25 minutes of racing before we go for lunch. So a lot of racing action to sink our teeth into, and a lot of hungry Radicals as well as they line themselves up 2 by 2, all 10 of them, plus Pinkerton in the pit lane. It's going to be Marcus Littlewood that controls the pace. When does he put his foot to the floor and send us off racing for 25 minutes? He's left it very late, but here we go as they cross the start-finish line. Nose alongside there for Shane Stoney. He's looked to go to the outside to take the race lead. Marcus Littlewood is going to give him the space. There's a spinner as well as he tumbles down. I think that was P3 at the time. Shane Stoney looking to go to the outside of Marcus Littlewood, who locks up going into Druid's corner. Have they taken each other off? There's spinners and crashes in the background as well. 3 cars involved, as I think it was Littlewood that was able to hold firm at the front towards Great Hill Bend for the first time. It's going to be Littlewood from Stoney, then Jack Yang, I think, potentially has been able to hang on there in 3rd place. Of course, we'll all confirm, but we've still got a couple of cars stationary at the bottom of the hill at Paddock, so I think we might be needing to go under a full course yellow or something of the measure, because they're still not able to get going again, and indeed so a full course safety car in action under the first lap of the Radical Cup UK. And when they cross the beam, of course, we'll confirm the who was involved and when. Of course, it was a pretty interesting start, to say the least, for the Radical Cup UK, side by side going into turn number 1. But it was great to see how aggressive Littlewood and Stoney were with each other, of course. They were neck and neck going into turn number 1. Stoney had the bravery to go the long way around a Paddock Hill Bend, which isn't easy to do by any stretch of the imagination. But, of course, with the way that Paddock Hill, obviously, it's a hill, right? You know, it's in the name, but it's also very, very steep, and the car grips up. I mean, naturally, you sort of think you're going to run wide and keep pressing on, but as you then get to the sort of the bottom, when the car really squats down and compresses, where gravity is forcing the tyres into the ground, the car then bites and gives you that grip. I think that's a red flag shown as well. Indeed it is. So not just safety car, red flag. So drivers will return to the pit lane. That is a very crashed Radical. Not entirely sure as to whose that is, trying to make out a number on the side of the car there. Either way, suboptimal. But yeah, nice to see Littlewood and Stoney going side by side. A big lock-up, though, from Marcus Littlewood going into Druids on the inside. Ran them both wide. But be interesting to see when we get this race restarted as to how aggressive they're going to be with each other, because if that sets the tone for the race that we've got, I am very much looking forward to it. Of course, there is an amazing crew of marshals here at Brands Hatch. Of course, the ambulance crew as well, the safety car crew, everyone behind the scenes that makes this happen. Of course, motorsport, it is dangerous. Crashes do happen, but the efficiency of these marshals, of course, all of them here as volunteers, and there's an extensive amount of training that goes into being a good marshal, a competent marshal, a safe marshal, and they do such a good job. You know, they're out there on the track, that no matter the conditions, whether it be 30-degree heat or it be, you know, pouring of rain, they're out there and they're serving. So, you know, we really couldn't go racing without the ambulance crews, the race directors, the marshals, everyone behind the scenes that makes racing possible. So everyone, you know, should be very, very, very thankful, very, very grateful to have them. And I'm sure this delay will be a swift resolution. Hopefully all the drivers involved, of course, are okay. Not entirely sure as to who was involved. I'm going to guess it's the ones that didn't break the beam. That would make sense. And that would be Jack Yang, Fongini and Davis, who didn't break the beam, and thus I would conclude are the ones that are involved down at the bottom of the hill at Paddock. Of course, that was quite a extensive bit of damage to the side of one of the cars. The sort of the rear hub or sort of arm was bent. The wheel was effectively off. So going to be a tough time sort of maybe to get that fixed. When are they back out later on? They're not back out today, so of course they have got at least overnight to get the car fixed before they're back out for their 2 races that they've got over the course of tomorrow. One 20 minutes in length, one 50 minutes in length, so a slightly longer one over the course of tomorrow. Yeah, not the way that you want to start the race, but definitely showed us some promise in terms of the racing that we can get. Just, of course, these things happen. It is racing, and Paddock Hill Bend can often show as a bit of a pinch point for those mistakes. I mean, it could have just been a small thing. The fight was at the front, a couple of people going side by side at the back, but there you can see the grid is sorted for when we go back racing again. So as soon as they've got obviously those cars recovered, they've now got the flatbed out there to go and recover them. They've got one already down there. I think one may be on the way as well. So get those cars recovered, get the drivers back into the paddock, and then we'll be able to go racing again for however long the race directors deem to be left on the clock, whether that be sort of a reduced start as to sort of get us back on schedule, or to be a full race restart. We'll confirm, of course, as soon as we can. Yeah, a little bit of information, by the way, while we're under red flag and nothing's going on track. Let's have a look at the sort of championship standings coming into this round. Of course, 167 points goes the way Marcus Littlewood to 126 in the form of Forrest in second. So a bit of a healthy points gap there for Marcus Littlewood, of course, showcasing some pretty good prowess over the course of the first round of the season. McLeod from Robertson, and then Lowe, the top 5, with 93 points at the back end of the field for Lowe in that particular car. Of course, the team standing as well is very much there. RSR, Radical Racing Rebels, 360 Competition, DW Racing and Valor Racing all involved in that particular order as well. And also looking quite close, 160 points to 132 points in the 2025 team standings. So also looking very, very close. But of course, championship standings, like I said, in the Focus Cup, a little bit more of a novelty at this stage. It's nice to lead the championship. It's great. You score points, and it's going to help you out in the long run, sort of when you get to the end of the season, and you're grateful that you've got these points banked, ready to sort of give you that helping hand later on in the season. But right now, being a championship leader, it's nice. It's just not going to be that sort of be-all and end-all that could decide your championship. There you can see the extensive recovery that we've got going on, trying to get this done as smoothly and as effectively as possible. But thankfully, the cars have kind of kept themselves all in one piece as such. You've not got sort of bits of debris here, there, and everywhere that's going to make it a bit of a pain to clean up. They've all sort of stayed as a collective unit in terms of each of the separate cars. And then we'll be able to get ourselves to the restart as soon as possible. Thank you to everyone that, of course, is tuning in on whether you're watching along on YouTube, on Facebook. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know who you're supporting over the course of the GT Cup Championship weekend here at Brands Hatch. And sort of what race you're most looking forward to as well. I mean, who's your favourite driver in the Radicals, where you're watching from, and make sure, of course, to like, subscribe, and share around the broadcast as well to as many people as you can, to get as many eyes on the amazing racing action that we've got over the course of today and tomorrow. Of course, just a quick rundown as well for those that are joining us. If you're focused on the radicals, but you've got the rest of your Saturday and your Sunday to sort of watch some racing. Over the course of today, we're going to be having broadcasted. We've got things like the GT Cup Championship, of course. The Miata Trophy is going to be taking place just after that as well. Sports 2000 Championship that after qualifying was looking very, very close. The second race of Focus Cup before taking us back to the sort of the feature endurance race, the 50-minute race of the GT Cup Championship, and then ending the day back with the Miata trophies in the MX-5s. Very, very good championship as well. So make sure you are sticking around for each and every single bit of the racing action on the respective championships YouTube channels over the course of the day as well. Slowly getting these cars lifted up onto the flatbed, getting it done as quickly and more importantly as safely as possible. Making sure the drivers, of course, are sort of clear and safe as well before we can get this race underway. But is, like I say, amazing to see the efficiency of these marshals to sort of react from sort of race control, get the cars then recovered, all in the span of, you know, sort of 5-10 minutes from call and response to action, and that is amazing to see. The grid then, as they will sort of line up when we go racing again, is going to be everyone sort of lined up on the field, and this actually, to an extent, is a very... It's not a good thing, obviously, to have 3 cars crash on the first lap, but for Pinkerton, it very much is going to be. Of course, we're starting from the pit lane initially, obviously then started from the pit lane, and there was a red flag on lap 1, which then bunches the field back up together, and that disadvantage of having to go to the pit lane for whatever reason, let's see if I can find it, not at the moment. So for whatever reason, we're starting from the pit lane, maybe a technical infringement or qualifying or something, that disadvantage is now gone. So James Pinkerton, fair enough, is going to be starting at the back, but first of all, it's a reduced grid. We've lost 3 cars. That's 3 less cars to overtake. Going to be right there with the rest of the field as well, and that's going to allow him to maybe get spicy in this race. Of course, we also have you know, the front 2 as well. That's going to be keeping us honest. The Shane Stoney and the Marcus Littlewood at the front. Hopefully, they continue on sort of battling tooth and nail as they had been for the whole 2 corners that we had of the initial race before the safety car and then the subsequent red flag came out. But yeah, the thing with red flags this early on, right, is as a driver, the sort of, you know, you get that adrenaline spike, right? You get in the car, you've had, for these guys, they were last out at 9:30 this morning for qualifying. You know, they've had time to mellow out, they've had some lunch, maybe some breakfast, whatever it is, right? And they've really mellowed out. That helmet comes on, you get in the car, the engine starts, and the adrenaline spikes. And you're pumped, you're ready to go, you're eager. I mean, especially at the front with Littlewood and Stoney, you've just had a fantastic battle. That adrenaline has gone up, that fight or flight response has exponentially risen. And then 2 seconds later, the red flag comes out and immediately has to come crashing back down again. So either they're sort of riding the wave of adrenaline and being there itching, nervous, anxious, ready to go, or sort of maybe the drivers that are able to keep themselves a bit more composed, mellow themselves out a little bit, and just reset ahead of the restart. It's going to allow them to give them that sort of little bit of an edge going into the second part of this race, because that is a big thing. I mean, like I say, as a racing driver, and definitely in radicals, which are, you know, bullets, sort of effectively on the racetrack, you get a lot of adrenaline. They're sliding around all over the place. They're loud. The engine's right behind you. And that's a difficult sort of balance to have, especially after only 2 corners, then to be sat there on the grid, itching, nervous, ready to go, thinking, oh my word, I'm Marcus Littlewood, I'm on pole position. I was just able to hang on to it, but Stoney was really quick and was pressuring me for the first part of the race. And now he has to reset. Not only does he have to do that all again and get it right a second time, he also then has to control the entirety of the race from that point on. We have got movement at the bottom of Paddock Hill Bend, though. We've got the couple of cars being ratchet straps. One of them is already departed, which is amazing. There goes another as well. Just waiting for the last one to make their way onto the service road back into the paddock, and we'll be able to go racing once more. Found a couple of sweeps as well from the marshals, just to make sure no debris, no gravel, nothing going to be causing another incident through Paddock Hill Bend for the first time. And that's the thing as well with rolling starts, is that you're approaching turn number 1 bunched up at a much higher speed as you would than if you were sort of standing. So again, people are going to be braking late, and they're carrying maybe a bit more speed than they expect, especially those sort of in the slipstream. And that opens the door for a little bit of intrigue, because you're locked side by side. It's not like a standing start like we saw with the Focuses, where a couple of people on the same row are going to be slightly different with a clutch bike point. There could be a drastic difference, and maybe not many people are going to be side by side. With a rolling start, similar to sort of what you may be seeing in pro-level karting or anything with a rolling start, you're locked essentially side by side towards turn 1. And you know, when you increase the risk like that, naturally things maybe are going to be increased to go wrong as well. Yeah, like I say, let us know in the YouTube chat, where is everyone watching from? How are you getting on with your day? It's a lovely day here at Brands Hatch. Let us know if you're watching sort of trackside or at home. It'd be lovely to see sort of where we are and who we've got as well in the YouTube chat. I think we're nearly going to be ready to go for a reformation lap. For the first race of these drivers this weekend. Like I say, it's going to be their only race of today, but they'll be back out over tomorrow with their 20-minute and 50-minute races at Brands Hatch, which, like I say, poses a very big challenge in terms of. In terms of as a driver, right? Just in a couple of comments in the YouTube chat as well, sort of talking about that, the sort of how good Brands Hatch is as a circuit, one of the best tracks in the world, with the elevation changes here being so awesome, and the courage that it takes, because it is a roller coaster, right? I mean, there are sometimes I'm just on the motorway in my car and I go down a steep hill and I get a little bit shaky. To do that, upwards of 120 mile an hour, fighting for wins, is going to be very, very difficult indeed. But red flag is over. Cars are rolling for another formation lap for the Radical Cup UK. Of course, it's going to be a slightly altered start in regards to the fact that we've lost 3 cars ahead of the start of the race. But the front 2 most certainly are still here. We've got Marcus Littlewood and Shane Stoney, the front row. We don't have Jack Yang, so Hamish Forrest is going to then be promoted. Andy Lowe, I think, was one of the drivers involved. John McLeod, Alex Fisher, Rachel Robertson, Wesley Fangini was definitely involved, and I think John Davis was one of the drivers involved as well. So they're going to be sort of knocked off row 5. James Pinkerton is then going to inherit their places, not going to be taking to a pit lane start, and that is going to be very, very beneficial for his race today, as he doesn't have the huge deficit of having to close that gap after a huge deficit of having to start from the pit lane standing start. So getting the tyres back into temperature, all the brakes, everything back into their working window, because, well, again, they've been sat stationary for the best part of 5-10 minutes. And when it comes to a car with such fine balance, such as the Radicals, they really are sometimes on a knife's edge. And with a track with very, very slim, 0 margin for error as Brands Hatch, you want to make sure that everything is in the right working window. So weaving around, trying to get some temperature into the tyres, and then also just trying to calm the nerves. Give yourself a game plan. What can you approach through this race? How can you maybe approach it a bit differently if it didn't work before? What about Shane Stoney? Is he going to try and go around the outside again? Marcus Littlewood, how's he going to defend? Can they get the jump that they once had as we go racing once more? Still not sure as to how long it's going to be. I think it's going to be a revised 15 minutes on the clock. Indeed it is. There it is, right on cue at the top. Side by side then at the front. Marcus Littlewood will once again control the pace as the Hyundai MSV safety car pulls its way into pit lane. The Radical Cup UK race number 1 here at Brands Hatch once again is going to get itself underway. 15 minutes now on the clock. It's Marcus Littlewood and Shane Stoney the front row. Rigo racing once more, and it's still neck and neck towards Paddock Hill Bend. Shane Stoney once again going to try what he did in the previous part of the race. Goes to the outside of Paddock Hill Bend. Marcus Littlewood is going to try and force him to the outside over the curb then, and still side by side up the hill towards Drew. Is the number 3 then on the left hand side of picture. Marcus Littlewood able to hang on to the race lead. Does another spin. That's the 14. That's going to be McLeod. That's out of this race. A damaged rear wing and another yellow flag to start off this race. Littlewood then from Stoney in the 69 machine. Then it'll be Fisher that breaks the beam to complete the podium. Rolling and moving, though, albeit with a very damaged rear wing and very little downforce coming out of that. 14 minutes on the clock then. So barely a minute into this race and already carnage and chaos ensuing. But these drivers now, they're already further into the race than they ever got in the first part of it. So Marcus Littlewood and, of course, Stoney is going to have to get into the rhythm of things. Sorry, in the 89 machine is Stoney for Valor Racing up there in second place. So having to adjust, of course, the sun very much glaring down on Brands Hatch. So, of course, while a lot of it was, oh my goodness me, there Stoney taking a very wide line through Sterling, kicking up a lot of grass. Very easy to do, as you're very tempted to take a lot of speed going through that left-hander. The dip in the middle of the corner, like I say, compresses the car, gives you that grip and a bit of camber as well. But if you get on the power a bit too early, if you carry a bit too much speed, you're going to find yourself running wide. And that's going to allow Littlewood to establish a lovely lead at the front, just shy of a second clear of Stoney. Then comes Forrest and Robertson, and Fisher your top 5 for the Finecut Radical Cup UK. 13 minutes still on the clock. Pinkerton still at the back of the field, so not able to capitalise on the restart as such. Same too for McCoy. Like I say, we lost the likes of Fungini, Davis and Yang to the red flag, so they're not going to be taking to the field. And as such, Pinkerton, like I say, as you can see on your timing, is going to be there in 7th place. There's our race leaders into Hawthorne, and it is very crucial for Littlewood to establish this lead early because, I mean, he's clearly got the pace, right? He's leading the championship. He knows what he's doing. He showed it during qualifying, but it's a different thing to then go and convert that in the race, especially when the pressure is on, and especially after that huge lockup that we saw going into Druids. As there you can see the 14 of John McLeod, limping his way back into pit lane and back towards the paddock down that little service road there. So that's going to be his day done here on Saturday. Hopefully we'll see him fighting back over the course of tomorrow. But yeah, for Littlewood to establish that lead, very, very crucial. Have to deal with that pressure and the gap far from over. I mean, fair enough, the 89 is not directly pressuring right now as they whiz past the timing line and down into Paddock Hill Bend once more. The pressure isn't sort of there direct. He's not physically going for moves. He's not physically sending it up the inside, but he's still applying that pressure because every time Marcus Littlewood will just sort of look in his peripheral vision, look in his mirrors, he sees that 89 machine. He knows that this race is far from settled, and one small mistake is going to be the difference between Littlewood winning this race and potentially finishing P2 or maybe even worse. So 11.5 minutes left to go. Another lap ticked down, of course, as they break the beam to complete lap number 2. Thus far, like I say, it is going to be Littlewood that leads the way. His last lap, barely half a tenth of a second quicker than Stoney. It was a 7.54 for Littlewood, an 8.22 for Stoney. So they're fairly matched. I think it was that slight small mistake for Stoney that ever so slightly put him off the back of the fight. And of course, when it comes to these radicals, yeah, fair enough. They're short wheelbase, they're low down cars, they are nippy, they are light, and they have also got that downforce. So there is going to be an element of maybe dirty air at play with those rear wings, with those aero components. Obviously, nowhere near to the extent that you would maybe in like a hypercar, even to the extent of maybe a GT car like we'll see in GT Cup. But there is going to be an element of that. The turbulent air coming off the back end of Littlewood could still be affecting how effectively Stoney's car is able to push those tyres into the ground and generate that grip. And in fact, actually, that gap has closed. It very much has closed by about half a second that previous lap time. Shane Stoney was able to close it to now just 0.3 of a second. That is the gap. It took me by surprise. I thought it was Forrest closing in on Stoney for a second because of how quickly that gap was able to close. But no, that is the lead fight with 10 minutes left to go, and that has now raised the stakes. Initially, for the likes of Littlewood and Stoney, it's okay. It's chill. We got 25 minutes. We can, fair enough, it's still a sprint race and half the distance of what we're going to be doing tomorrow, but it's still enough time to get into a rhythm and settle into the race and sort of mellow it out a little bit. When you've only got 15 minutes, of which now we've already ticked through a third of, the stakes are raised and you realise, well, hang on, I don't actually have a lot of time to be making moves. I don't have a lot of time and I can't afford to be making mistakes. I have to be on it from lap 1 It's exactly what both of these drivers are bringing to the table. There is a slight mistake there from Littlewood, making a very similar error to what we saw Stoney do at the beginning of the race. And again, small things like that, small bits of pressure that Stoney can apply, not necessarily physically going for moves, but just by planting his car in the mirrors, saying, I'm here, you might have put it on pole, you might be leading the race, but I'm going to be trying to get into your head, I'm going to be trying to sort of lay down some psychological warfare. Small things like that could well add up, especially if those mistakes still continue to ramp up. Into Druids once more. You can bet your bottom dollar that both of these drivers are going to be pushing themselves to the limit. There's nothing better than a driver that you consider a rival that pushes you to that extra level. I mean, fair enough, if you can hot lap by yourself round and round and round Brands Hatch, eventually you'll get somewhat decent. When you're having to race someone, when you're having to catch or battle someone, your brain just instinctively, it's not even a conscious reaction, you just go quicker. You find lap time that you didn't once before, you trail brake a little bit better into corners, you chuck it in with a little bit more precision, and you carry a little bit more speed. You just have a little bit more courage because your body knows that's what's at stake. Like I say, that adrenaline, that fight or flight instinct drives you to just go a little bit quicker. So for Stoney, and of course for Littlewood at front, that's going to be the case, and they're going to be pushing very, very hard indeed with just 8 minutes left to go. The gap has opened up by about a car length or so between the number 3 and the 89. There is the 3 now heading under the Brands Hatch little bridge there. And of course, Stoney, the one in behind, are 2 leaders in this race. Breaking away as well from Forrest. In third, who seems pretty safe for a podium. I mean, he's got 3 seconds to these two. Realistically, I don't think unless they sort of crash, he's going to be able to catch them. And he's got 14 seconds back to the 56 of Robertson. So pretty safe is Hamish Forrest for a podium place, and he'll be looking to just sort of hang on to that, I think, until the end of the race. No, I mean, by all means, stay close to the top 2, because if there's one thing about racing, it's that it can constantly change and throw a spanner into the works. That's why we love it, right? That's why we love motor racing, is that we're always sort of suspended in that anticipation of something at some point going wrong for someone, or something going really well at another point for another. So Hamish Forrest can't afford to sort of lift off the pedal by any means and get complacent in this race and just settle, because things can still go right for him and wrong for the top 2 as well. Bit of coverage for the rest of the field. There's the 99. That is Pinkerton. James Pinkerton, who started at the back of this field, started in the pit lane. A very striking livery, actually. I do like that. Very colourful is his Radical. At the moment, running in 7th, ahead of course, the 4 of those that DNF. I mean, McLeod, we saw, of course, take to the restart. Then, of course, had the unfortunate damage at the end or the start of lap 1, going into Druids, just got tapped from behind. I wonder if the stewards will have anything to sort of say about that if they're able to catch it. But that knocks them out of contention. So 4 DNFs from this race, and Pinkerton, from a pit lane start, is looking secure to finish P7, which I'm sure he would have very much taken at the start of this race. The fight at the front, though, still raging on with still 6 minutes left to go. They're doing 1:24 around the GP circuit, which is quite quick. So we're going to be looking at maybe, well, the back grain will bend, so maybe sort of 3 or 4 laps at the line, depending on sort of how they cross it. Maybe a bit of a battle starting to form at the back end of the field as well. Pinkerton on the back of Lowe, so the 4 versus the 99. A fight for 6th place. Now down to 1 second. It was 3 seconds at the end of last lap, a 26.628 compared to a 29.669 for the 360 competition and the Radical Factory drivers. The 4, of course, of Lowe in that 360 competition car. Now potentially could be under pressure in the final moments of this race. So Pinkerton, from a pit lane start, still yet could finish in 6th place. All things go well. Just 5 minutes left to go as well for the second race of the day. Just want something to happen at the front. I mean, it's been a slow burner for the fight at the front. The gap is 3/4 of a second. They've just sort of reached, not necessarily a stalemate as such, but it kind of is to that extent. They're close, but there's not really much at this stage that Stoney can really do. They're rising each other to better and better levels. A 24.098 just come in for Shane Stoney, which is only 1/10 of a second what off, he said, in qualifying, which is incredible pace. 24-4 for Littlewood, so that gap is closing. Let's just see if once Stoney can use that momentum to close in onto the back, use the slipstream, of course, which is going to be vitally important on the run up towards Hawthorne Bend. Of course, with how steep that hill is, but I think a bit of a mistake indeed it is. He's off. What has happened to Shane Stoney, our second place driver, off at Surtees? Was it a car issue or was it a driver issue going into Surtees? Just ran a bit too deep. The car just didn't want to turn in at all and then went straight on. That effectively all but hands the win over to Marcus Littlewood. With 4 minutes left to go, the number 3 will be looking in his mirrors in absolute delight. And that's what I mean for Hamish Forrest as well. He's been able to capitalise off that. I think it may well have been a skill issue in the form of Shane Stoney because of the fact that he's able to get back going again, or if it was a car issue, it very quickly resolved itself. But that's what I mean for Hamish Forrest, right? He was sat there. He was by no means. I mean, he's been able to match the two drivers in front with a 24.5 at his best lap time, and consistently sort of 24.5. But that last lap 25.6. So he's not been near the consistent pace of the front two. But because of that mistake, because he didn't put a foot wrong, he now finds himself up a place on the podium, provided, of course, that Stoney doesn't then recatch him going into the final couple of minutes of this race. 3 minutes and 20 seconds left on the clock. For Hamish Forrest, of course, that's going to be crucial in the championship as he's second place behind Marcus Littlewood, albeit going to be losing more points than number 3, but it's going to help him secure that what is second place at the moment in the standings. There's the 56, that's Robertson, at the moment running a pretty lonely P4. That being said, Fisher is not a million miles away. That last lap time was actually quicker for Robertson, so he's able to gain and extend that gap, but it's only 2.3 seconds in the fight for fourth. So it could be interesting to see how these two get on in their respective battles. There is our race leader, the number 3, Marcus Littlewood, who has not put a foot wrong all race long. Commanded the initial start. I mean, yeah, granted, fair enough. He had a bit of a lock-up into Druids. Big whoop, right? But apart from that, he's been able to deal with the pressure as what's happened to the 99. That's Pinkerton into the pit lane once again. Tyre pressure's being checked, being monitored, being looked at by the mechanics. With just 2 minutes left to go in the race. Something being monitored then on that car. Which is a shame because, like I say, he was closing in onto low for 6th place. So, yeah, into the pit lane for Pinkerton. And that is effectively race not necessarily done. He's probably going to take to the checker flag anyway and secure the points for 7th place. But, yeah, not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, Marcus Littlewood, like I was saying, has not put a foot wrong and has dealt with the pressure so well. And it's such a tricky thing as a driver, and it's something that drivers absolutely, and I will stand by this, do not get enough credit for. How composed you have to be. You know, it's one thing to be quick in a race car. It's one thing to be able to drive quickly. It's another thing entirely to be able to race quickly, to deal with the psychological pressure, to deal with not putting a foot wrong, that consistency, the brutality of not going wrong. And that is what Marcus Littlewood was able to do. Shane Stoney was applying that pressure lap after lap after lap. Not physically, like I said, you know, he wasn't going for dive bombs, wasn't showing his nose, but just by sitting in his mirrors was able to apply some pressure. And Littlewood just shrugged it off. And that is what crafts a champion. That is why he's leading the championship at the moment. On to the final lap then of the first race of the Finecut Radical Cup UK here for their second round of the 2025 season at Brands Hatch. And it's going to be a bit of a parade lap for the number 3 RSR driver of Marcus Littlewood. But again, still, even though it's a parade lap, can't get complacent. You know, things can still very much go wrong. You can lock the rears, you can lock the fronts, you can get onto a bit of AstroTurf, you can take too much curb, you can sort of bottom out the car can still go wrong. Obviously, touch wood that it doesn't, not that I believe in the commentator's curse, but it can still go wrong for Littlewood, so still has to bring it home within the limits of the car. But he's going to be a very, very happy bunny indeed. It's a shame for Shane Stoney, because up until then I was really looking forward to a fantastic race between the pair of them. But alas, was not meant to be, and a small mistake or whatever it was for Stoney that straw him off at Surtees puts him out of contention not only for the win but also for second place. as Hamish Forrester was able to tip him for that. The thing for Stoney, the sort of consolation prize for that, is that he does walk away with the fastest lap for this race. The 24.098 in race pace and race trim is rapid and shows how that driver instinct of when you're trying to catch someone really does kick in. But Marcus Littlewood, that's Stanley's towards Clark Curve for the final time. And race number 1 of the Finecut Radical Cup UK is going to go the way of our championship leader. The number 3, Marcus Littlewood, sees the checkered flag first and wins at Brands Hatch. He'll be joined on the podium as Hamish Forrest crosses the line, 2nd place in the championship, 2nd place in race number 1. And what could have been for Shane Stoney as he crosses the line in 3rd with the fastest lap for Valor Racing. We'll wait for the rest of the drivers, of course, to cross the line. And we'll run you through the results of what has been a very busy Radical Cup UK 2nd race of the day. Their first, of course, of the weekend. It was quite electric, to say the least, at the start, with a couple of issues before in the way of a couple of drivers, a couple of spins, bit of crashes, and basically motorsport, right? That's all you can really put it down to. A racing incident, things that go wrong, and occupational hazards, I think, is maybe one of the ways that you could put it. And then, of course, unfortunate for John McLeod to be fallen victim to yet more contact going into turn number 2 at Druids. But I think we've got all but one driver now across the line, still just waiting for Lowe in the number 4 machine. There is our final driver, and across the line is Lowe. What a race that was. I mean, it was pretty quiet for the sort of final 5 minutes, but the anticipation of something maybe happening at the front, that suspense really kept us on our toes at the front of the field. Of course, we'll run you through the results as soon as we get them for the Radical Cup UK's first race of the weekend. It's Marcus Littlewood, championship leader, that dominated here at Brands Hatch. Hamish Forrest and Shane Stoney, the podium places. The 56 of Robertson ahead of Fisher for the top 5. Then comes Lowe, Pinkerton and McLeod, a DNF in the end in P8. Of course, we had the likes of Wesley Fongini, John Davis and Jack Yang take to the initial start, but by no means able to finish at the first race of the weekend. Shane Stoney as well at 24.098, a rapid fastest lap to start the day off here in Brands. And these will be back for Sunday, and we'll see you then.